Hello, and welcome to Awaken, where we share insights to the connection between science and spirituality for self-discovery, joy, and freedom. I am your host and spiritual teacher, Stephanie Rouch, and I'm so pleased to be here with Jackie Coley. Jackie is a mindset coach who helps high achievers break free from procrastination, indecision, and overthinking. Not just by relying on willpower, but by rewiring the deep-seated beliefs that keep them stuck. She draws from neuroscience and behavioral psychology and guides her clients to shift their mindset so that their brain works for them, not against them. She is a former scientist with a Ph.D. in biomedical sciences from Albert Einstein College of Medicine. So she now empowers professionals to create more freedom, autonomy, and impact in their careers and lives, and has been a friend to me, has been very open to connecting with people who are making that shift into wanting to live the life of their dreams and go beyond what keeps them stuck. So Jackie, thank you so much for being here and being part of Awaken. Tell us about your journey from biomedical sciences to mindset.
Yeah. Well, first of all, Steph, thank you so much for having me here. It's such an honor to be a part of this. Yeah, my journey has been a circuitous one, I guess. Not going to go through my whole life story, but it's funny because when I was younger, I would have never imagined that this is where I'd be right now. And it's one of those things where if I've learned anything along the way, it's that you never know where life's going to take you, but you have to be open to walk in the path and to course correcting when necessary and to trusting yourself and leaning into that desire to do something that's more meaningful than maybe logic would want you to do. And that's kind of how I ended up doing what I'm doing now. So I had a very traditional path for the vast majority of my life. Good student, good grades, went to grad school, and I left academia immediately after getting my PhD. I knew I didn't want to stay in research. I found myself doing work that on paper made a lot of sense. Like when I was looking for that first job right out of academia, it ticked all the right boxes. It was combination of science and an application and education. It was all the things that I thought I wanted or did want. However, what I didn't know at the time were that there were other factors that really go into having a meaningful and fulfilling career that I just was too naive to really understand. Like there's no judgment here. This is just the way that it worked out. And after about 4 years in that role, I reached a point where I realized that I was just phoning it in every single day. I wasn't really connected to the work I was doing, even though it was good work. And it looked good from the outside. From the outside, I looked successful. I was on a path that was going to be really solid. The work we did, or they still do, helps society. It's benefiting people in a very real and tangible way. However, it wasn't personally fulfilling. There was a misalignment there. And I realized that I needed to get out of that work environment because that misalignment was causing a whole lot of friction and a whole lot of stress. And it was resulting in more of a toxic culture than I really could handle, to be frank. And so it was during that time of like trying to escape from what had become a very toxic workplace that I realized that my brain was working against me in many ways. And I discovered the power of mindset work, the power of personal growth, because I needed it at the time. I was doing all the right things in the job search process and wasn't getting any traction. I was getting told no over and over and over again. And it wasn't, until I realized that it's not just what you're doing, it's how you think about it, how you feel about your prospects, what's possible for you. Those beliefs, they affect how you show up, even if you're doing the exact right things. Your implementation may not be ideal. And so that's really where self-sabotage comes in. I didn't know that at the time, but it was through this process of getting out of my own way and learning how to reframe the way I think, how to train my mind to stop working against me, that I was able to eventually get out of that position. I got a much safer feeling role, like the culture was safer in the next role I had. And when I had that space to breathe and I wasn't in survival mode anymore, That's when I took a step back and started asking myself the questions that I help clients with now, which is, what do I really want to do? What's calling me? What's going to light me up? And was able to make a decision about what direction I wanted to go in from there, from a place of calm and possibility versus that fear-based, I have to get away from something kind of feeling. So yeah, fast forward to now, I started listening to the conversations that were going on in the PhD community, and I heard a lot of the same, limiting beliefs, the same fears, the same why isn't this working? I'm doing what I'm supposed to, and that's really what inspired me to go into the work that I do now. And I could be happier, even when it's tough. I couldn't be happier.
I am so curious how you rely on or how you integrate in your research training and even what neuroscience, what behavioral psychology you pull from to guide your work now.
Yeah, it's funny because I started out being very interested in the minutia of what was going on in the cell and really zooming in. And now I work on a macro level with behavior. So again, couldn't have expected it to go this way, but I'm so glad it did. And looking back, it's kind of inevitable, right? But
Mm.
so what I've learned is that everything comes back to our minds. Everything comes back to how we think, because how we think affects what we do and how we show up. And the reason for that is because fundamentally we act in alignment with what we believe our identity to be. And so if for example, if you believe that you don't deserve the thing that you want, whatever that could be, that could be an actual object, it could be a job, it could be a partner, a healthy relationship, a different shaped body, whatever, right? If you don't believe that you deserve that, if that you're not worthy, then even if you were to do the things that ought to get you that result, you're going to find ways to subtly uh, get in your own way and not implement quite right, or you're going to hold back just a little bit, or maybe even not even notice opportunities available to you, because your identity is tied to that lack of worth, or that I don't deserve it, or that I'm not good enough. And so that all starts in the head. That has nothing to do with the external circumstances. That is purely a matter of how you're choosing to view the world and the beliefs you have about what's possible, both for you and just, in your life in general. And so it's by recognizing that by working with your mind and the way that your mind works, you can reshape those beliefs, but you have to be aware of it and you have to put some effort into it. Because if you don't, we've all done this. We just live on autopilot. We go through the motions, we do what's expected of us, we run these programs over and over again, and we get the same kinds of results that we've gotten because that's what we're used to. And we're wired to want the things that are familiar to us, which is why it's hard to break those patterns, but we can break those patterns. It just starts with, being a bit more aware than we typically would be.
Great. So, yeah, it sounds like you're saying we don't have to repeat the past. We tend to repeat the past if we don't change it because that's the familiar path our brains like to travel, but we don't have to.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely.
so awareness is the first step.
Mhm.
How do you gain awareness into the ways that you might be self-sabotaging?
It's a lot of it's just practice. I mean, that sounds overly simplistic, but a lot of it is practice. It's about learning to listen to that little voice that knows better. The little voice that's like, are you sure you want to do that? Do you really want to do that? It's like the angel and the devil on the shoulder kind of thing. That's part of it. And when you can get to that point where you start to trust your gut or your intuition or however your higher knowing, like however you want to phrase it, that's really powerful because that's the little reality check that you have internally to pause and go, is this really who I want to be in this moment? Before you get there, it can often be helpful to have some external help because it's hard to see what we're doing when we're in our own head. You can't read the label when you're inside the box. And so that's really where, a mentor, a coach, a teacher, someone who can lovingly call you out on your BS and your excuses. Not from, again, not from a place of judgment or recrimination, but just to point out, like, hey, you keep saying you want this thing, but you keep procrastinating, you keep putting it off. You don't commit to following through. What's going on there? And again, it's not an excuse. It's not to give you an opportunity to beat yourself up, which is what some people do, and it's not. I don't recommend that. It's more for that awareness because if you have no idea that you're behaving this way over and over again, well, once you see it, sometimes it's hard to unsee it. And even that, just being able to recognize when the behavior shows up and what the pattern looks like, it gives you just enough pause to say, well, maybe I can choose to do differently in this moment. Maybe I don't have to do it this way because I've always done it that way. I can do something different. And yeah, so that combination of either having, first having usually an external person to kind of remind you, and then learning to recognize it yourself, you just build that muscle over and over again, and it becomes easier with time. It's real hard in the beginning. I'm not going to lie. Like self-awareness isn't the easiest thing to get, but it does take practice. And once you get the hang of it, you'll start noticing left and right. And then that creates a different set of challenges.
Well, even to take it back to the beginning, I'm wondering for those listeners out there who are like, okay, that sounds good, but what if I really don't know if I deserve what I want? What would you say to people still in that questioning of, am I worthy? Do I deserve these desires that I have in my heart?
Well, for starters, you're worthy simply by being. Like there's no earning it, there's no proving it. We think we need to do those things, but fundamentally, just simply by existing, you're worthy. And I know it's easy for me to say, it's probably hard to accept, but that's an important shift to make. However, something more practical, right? Um, a thing that's more practical here really is to get clear about what it is that you want. And when I say clear, I mean so granular that you can imagine not just what it would look like, but you can feel it in your body. Like you actually have an emotional reaction when you envision having the thing that you want. Because the truth is that most of the time we set goals that are too vague, or they're not even what we really want, they're what we think we're allowed to have. So the goals are too small. And so they're not compelling. They're not personal enough, they're not emotionally driven, and they're not compelling enough to actually go through the work or the challenges to actually get them. So that clarity piece is really important because when you make up your mind to have something, you'll get it. You'll go after it. But the fact is that most of the time those big goals that we say we want, we're not clear enough. And either the clarity is again, it's around the specificity, or it's not really what you want. It's what you think you're allowed to have, what you think is acceptable, um, what you think society is going to approve or your family's going to approve of. And so I would start with getting clear, keep going and digging deeper until you hit on that thing that gives you goosebumps. It makes you feel like simultaneously a little excited and a little scared because that's something that's going to move you to take action. That's something that's going to move you to press through those fears and go after it with a determination of, a 5-year-old wearing a Superman costume, right? Like, that kind of like laser focus on, I want that and I don't care how I'm going to get it. I'm just going to figure it out. That's the kind of clarity you need.
Mm, that's great. And you started to say this, and I just want to emphasize for people who are in that phase of like, I don't really know yet what I want. How do they continue to dig deeper? What are some ways that they can unearth what that desire is?
Well, one way you can do it by yourself. I mean, you can work with someone, like a coach or something to do this for sure. But if you wanted to get started by yourself, I always take inspiration from I have two nieces, and this is why I mentioned the kid in the Superman costume, right? Like I love how children don't worry about whether or not something's feasible. They don't worry about how they're going to get there. They just want what they want, and they want it with their whole being. And we lose that willingness to dream with abandon as we get older. Due to peer pressure and societal, stuff. And so tapping back into that is really powerful. And so one way you can do that is to allow yourself just to daydream like a kid. You
Mm.
know, you don't have to share it with anybody. You don't have to write it down if you don't want to, but just, turn off the phone, step back from all of the noise in the world, go for a walk or do something and just let yourself daydream and imagine, what would you want? How would you want your life to look if you really could have it any way that you desired? And just keep dreaming big and let yourself really feel it. And, just let your mind wander because your heart knows, like you know deep down, it's really about excavating all the crap that we pile on ourselves, all the masks and all the expectations, it's but pulling all of that aside and just looking deep down in your heart what it is that really drives you.
Mm.
You don't have to share it with anybody if you don't want to right away, but just knowing for yourself is really powerful.
For those listeners who are like, well, I've done that and then I didn't get what I wanted and my heart was broken. So, like, I'm scared of my heart being broken by really being honest about what I want. What would you say to that as a mindset coach?
I would ask if they've ever had their heart broken romantically before. And if they did they completely abandon, all possibility of romance because of one jackass? You know, we think in absolutes like that because it makes us feel safe. And you're welcome to do so. Like there's nothing, preventing you from doing that. But I would ask you to consider, is that worldview going to help you feel the kind of happiness that you're looking for? Is that worldview going to serve you as you move forward in life? Or is it going to build a wall around you that's going to shut everything out? Because you can't have it both ways. You can't say, I'm never going to feel hurt, and not also say, I'm never going to feel joy. And, as much as we would like to think we can compartmentalize, that's just not true. And so you're either here for all of it or you're not here for any of it. And, it's not easy to hear, but that's the fact of the matter. And trying to straddle the line is really what causes a lot of stress. So one way to work with that is to this is my science background, right? Is to take a step back and look at it as an experiment.
Yeah.
At everything that we do in life, all of the things that we try, it's not about getting what you want every single time. It's about learning and growing along the way. So maybe that thing that you went after, maybe it wasn't the thing that you were meant to go after in the first place, and this was part of a lesson in perhaps this isn't the right course. It could also be a lesson, for example, in maybe this isn't the right approach.
Mm.
Maybe the target is still the right target for me, or the goalpost is still the right goal, but I need to find a different way to go about it. That's also, a consideration. A third possibility is maybe I'm not the right, maybe I haven't become the version of me who gets to have that yet. That maybe there's some inner work that needs to happen. Probably a combination of all three. But if you look at what's happening as I'm doing these things, I'm trying these experiments, and all of the results are just data. All of the results are just information, and that I get to choose what the data mean, that
Love
I get to create the meaning, you know? And so if you choose to make it mean that you're a terrible person who doesn't deserve happiness, well, that's one option. I would, posit that it's probably not the most useful option, but we default to that a lot of the time because we have a negativity bias. But another way to look at it is, oh, that approach wasn't the right approach. Or, huh, maybe I need to level up my skill set, or maybe I need to learn how to speak more kindly to myself and treat myself with a bit more compassion before I'm able to receive the things that I desire.
it.
Like there's a whole host of ways to look at it, but the point is that you have multiple ways that you could look at the outcomes if you're willing to take a step back and not make it so personal and treat it more like an experiment.
I love that. And it made me think about an anecdote that I've heard a number of times about Michael Jordan uh, not making the team in high school. Is that right? Someone can fact check me, but he failed a lot. Like he wasn't chosen right away, and yet he went on to become what some could argue who's the greatest basketball player of all time.
Mhm.
But it wasn't always like that. So I'm hearing you say that too, that it doesn't mean, oh, I decide and then it's easy and all the doors are opened. Like there's still a journey and there's still a shaping of who you are that happens as you move towards that vision.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I think this is a Michael Jordan quote as well that I'm going to bungle. But, I want to say he said something about how he's missed more shots in his career than he made. And that's about the sheer amount of practice he put in and the work he put in to get great. That it's not, we see the end result of all of the things that happen to get that person to that point where they're successful. But we don't see all of the hard work that goes on before that. And so I think that's where the misconception comes that, oh, it must be easy for them. They must be talented. They must be lucky. And sure, there might be an element of luck involved in that, maybe the timing does need to be quite, right for certain things to happen. However, don't discount all of the hard work that went into becoming the kind of person who could have the kind of success that he had, And I love the fact that, that whole thing about I missed more shots than I made shows that the failure wasn't a bad thing, right? Because so many people take quote unquote failure personally. I missed the shot, therefore I'm not any good. No, it's just a skill. It's a skill gap more often than not. And that skill might be an external skill, something that you do outside in the world, or it could be an internal skill, like how you think, how you respond to, do you let your emotions run you, or are you in control? That kind of thing. But it's all just a skill difference,
Mhm.
and skills can be trained.
Totally. And even what you're saying of getting getting to an opportunity to reframe what failure means, and that working with a coach can be really helpful as you go throughout that process of trying, maybe feeling vulnerable, putting yourself out there and it not going perfect, and getting to celebrate that effort instead of feeling like, who am I? Who do I think I am trying this thing that I'm no good at, but that you can use it to keep going.
Mhm. Yeah. And that's one of those things that we can do you can do right now. You can do that from starting right now and just by changing the way that you talk about it. I had it wasn't a coach. Oh, it was the founder of a company I used to work for, who would say sometimes we succeed and sometimes we learn.
Hmm.
That the binary isn't success or failure. It's you either got the thing you wanted or you got a lesson.
Mhm.
And those are the two options. So even just taking the word failure out of it, because failure has all those connotations in our minds. So choose a different word for it and see how that feels, because sometimes that's enough to help us get on that path of reframing the way that we respond to things.
So for listeners who are like, okay, I think I need to explore some mindset coaching, what are ways that they can work with you?
So I only work with people one-on-one right now. And the reason for that is that while there's a lot of power in courses and that kind of learning, a lot of it isn't about information, it's about integration and implementing. And so and I do this because I learned this the hard way. I took a lot of courses myself in the beginning, and it wasn't until I started working with actual humans that I could converse with in real time that I was able to see better results, especially with the mindset stuff. And again, that's because it's hard to analyze your own thinking. And so having someone who can notice the pattern, this is really what coaches, mindset coaches will do. Not just me, but any, find a coach that you get along with whose style really resonates with you. That's just my unsolicited advice on choosing a coach, because you're going to be talking a lot. And what a really good coach will do is just notice the patterns and connect the dots for you in a way that it's really hard, not impossible, but just really hard to do on your own. So I work with individuals on mainly two different areas. The first is clarity. As I mentioned before, clarity is really key because if you have an unclear target that you're aiming for, it's kind of hard to hit it, right? It's really hard to plan out what you need to do, who you need to become, and navigate all of that if you're not clear about the destination. So I work with folks to get super clear about what it is that they want to achieve, and more importantly, why that matters to them so much. Is it coming from you or is it coming from society? Oh, is it coming from society? Let's dig into that a bit more. Really want to get clear about that. The other thing I help with is about the implementation part, the doing, because we all know what we need to do for the most part. If we have a clear goal, we're pretty sure, more or less what we need to do, at least to get started. And yet we still don't do it, right? It's so hard just to take that first step. It's so hard even just to get the momentum going. And that's got everything to do with the programming that's running the show. So that your thoughts and your beliefs and your assumptions. And so I work with individuals to help them identify and notice and generate that awareness around the ways that they sabotage themselves. Because we're all slightly different. There's a lot of common patterns among us humans, but each of us has our own favorites. And so it's about helping the client see in what way it's showing up in their lives so that they can recognize it on their own in real time, and then working together to come up with strategies that they can implement on their own on a day-to-day basis to counteract, those self-sabotaging behaviors that crop up.
Fabulous. Fabulous. Well, Jackie, thank you so much for sharing all this wisdom. And I'm wondering whether for a final takeaway for the audience, whether it's emphasizing a point you already made or even bringing in a new point, what is a take-home message that you want audience members who are watching to go away with?
If there's one thing that people take away from this conversation, it's that everything is possible. It may not all be possible all at one time, but it is possible. And that willingness to believe in what's possible is really the thing that drives any kind of forward momentum. And so learning to tap into that is so powerful. And I know it sounds really basic, but sometimes it's the foundational stuff that we really need to be reminded of. So yeah, just learning to believe what's possible, it changes everything.
That's so huge. That's so huge of opening up the space that what you want is actually possible. I so appreciate that. And that leads into the gift that you are offering to audience members. Tell us about what they can expect by engaging with that free gift from you.
Yeah, the gift. I'm so excited about this. So, as we've talked about, like awareness is really a key first step. And so I created a really brief self-assessment to help you identify what I call it your inner saboteur, like your self-sabotage pattern, like what that shows up as. So it's called You versus Your Brain, Meet Your Inner Saboteur. It's a really quick self-assessment that's going to help you identify the primary self-sabotage pattern that you have or archetype that you have. And you might think you already know. You might already think, oh, I know, I'm procrastinating. Oh, I know, I'm an overthinker, right? Or I'm a people pleaser. Um, and that's fine, but you might be surprised. You might learn that there are a couple of other ones because we have a dominant one usually, but there are others that show up from time to time. And so knowing what those are can be really powerful. But even more importantly is that each of the inner saboteurs has a superpower as well. And so once you know what your inner saboteur, your main one is, I'll also show you a very practical way to tap into the superpower that your saboteur has. In addition to, some stuff about like just kind of how to get around their sneaky, like roadblocky things that they do. But yeah, the superpower is really the thing that I think will be the most beneficial from this self-assessment.
Yeah, even that idea that, oh, there's a part of me that's bad that I need to overcome. And you're saying, oh, not really, just like
Yeah.
gain some awareness and then integrate whatever that part of you is to
Mhm.
unlock the superpower.
Yeah.
That sounds fabulous.
And the reason for that, I just want to add this real fast, is because your brain, like all of these thoughts, all these assumptions and the beliefs that we have, your brain is just trying to keep you safe.
Mhm.
It really is just trying to keep you safe, and that usually means keeping you the same.
Mm.
And so labeling like these behaviors as bad or these aspects of you as bad is also, not entirely true. And so that's one of the other reasons I wanted to share that there are good sides to them because it is a protection mechanism. It's not trying to hurt you. And so if you can leverage that and just kind of, pivot it a little bit so that again, so that your brain works for you instead of against you, that's how you become unstoppable.
Great. Well, I encourage everybody to check out that assessment. That sounds like a fantastic gift, very generous and very good use of time. And for people who want to stay connected, how can they find you after this and keep engaging with you?
Yeah, I'm primarily active on LinkedIn, so I would love to connect on LinkedIn. I also have a website. You can go to jackiecoley.com and check out what I do and my background there. But yeah, come say hi on LinkedIn. Well, let's connect there.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Jackie, for your time and being part of Awaken. I'm so grateful for what you had to share.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for tuning in to this amazing interview as part of our Awaken series. I hope you found value. Check out the rest of the interviews on Awaken. Keep tuning in and please subscribe to Paradigm Expansions to stay in touch, where we are doing more events like this. And we are all about dropping in to your heart, to your true self, to really, truly love your life. Thank you for joining. See you on the next video.